The power of bad. We tend to hold on to bad things a whole lot more. That's one of the reasons why just affirmations aren't going to work, because
Ravinder Taylor is a seasoned expert in the fields of hypnosis, psychotherapy, and mind training, with over 35 years of experience dedicated to understanding the power of the subconscious mind. Over the decades, she has delved deep into the science of the mind, exploring how beliefs, emotions, and subconscious programming shape our reality.
And then you can also have those people that say, well, I want success in all the areas. I want to tackle everything at one go. And that becomes such a big issue. They don't persist at anything and their expectations aren't realistic enough. What I like to do is...
What's going on, guys? You're listening to the David F. Haas podcast. In this podcast, I'm sitting down with Ravinder Taylor. She is just released a book on the power of the mind. And we have a great conversation digging into why we are the way we are, which is essentially the work that I do. But Ravinder has her own take on it. And I think you're really going to enjoy her insights to the belief systems and the programs that we take on and how to shift them. So stick around and listen. I hope you enjoy the show. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to come on the podcast here. You sent me over your little bio there and what you're working on, and I'm like, wow, this is like exactly aligned with the work that I do. You know, a big part of like what I do is understanding why we are the way we are and learning how to basically undo all that. And it sounds like that's kind of been like what you've been dedicated to as well for the last 30 years. So why don't you just kind of give me kind of like an overview of like what you've been working on and what this is all about?
I came into this not interested in self-help, self-improvement, any of that stuff. My degree's in microbiology, and I was working in a path lab when one day it was an anesthesiologist who came along to do a presentation on hypnosis and hypnotherapy, and the posters were put all over the hospital and everything. And it was aimed towards the doctors, the nurses, and the people who worked in the path labs. There were 70 people who worked in my path lab, and most of them attended this presentation, but they were sprinkled all through this huge auditorium. Coincidentally, the people that he called up to be subjects to demonstrate the different hypnosis techniques on all happened to come from my lab. So I knew for a fact they weren't shills. But there was a story he shared that really triggered my entire journey. I mean, I was interested in the mind, but only superficially. But this particular story, he was talking about a woman who had a pain in her arm. She'd had a pain in her arm, I believe, for about a decade. She had seen all the doctors, all the specialists, had all the tests done. They couldn't find out what the problem was. So as a last resort, she had gone for hypnotherapy. Under hypnosis, they did regression where they're actually, they assume that the answers lie in the subconscious mind, and the subconscious remembers where the triggering events are. So with this regression, they go back to that event, the event that started this problem. And she remembered a trauma, an emotional trauma. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was something that had upset her at the time. She hadn't really forgotten about it, but she had dismissed it and hadn't given it much thought. Well, after the hypnosis session, the following day, she called the hypnotherapist up and said the pain had gone. So all the best doctors in the world had been unable to help her. But this one hypnosis session, the pain had gone. She said the pain had gone immediately, but she hadn't believed it. So she had waited for the following day. And I was just intrigued by that. I was intrigued by the process of hypnosis, the idea that we have beliefs in our subconscious mind, and that those beliefs from the past can influence our present. Mm-hmm. So from there on, I did a 3-year course in hypnosis and psychotherapy. Then I met my husband, and he's in this field as well. And I have spent, as I said, the last 35 years researching ways, learning how the mind works, but more importantly, how we can use that information to actually improve our lives.
Yeah, and that's what I'm interested in, because what I basically help people do is uncover those belief systems that they're unaware of. Like a big part of like what I do is like, our thoughts create our reality is like basically what I believe. But the question I feel like some people are just never asking is, well, what's creating the thoughts? And it's usually like emotional triggers, these types of things that we buried. And so then there's belief systems that get tied to that, and then we just continue to hold in mind these things, which continues to create this reality that in some ways is not what we want. And so the question I guess I have for you is like, how are people putting this, how are people working with you or whatever, and putting this into like a practical life? I'm guessing it's probably they have a behavior or something in their life that is not serving them, and they're like, I got to get rid of this, and then they're being able to apply these techniques. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, I've been talking to lots and lots of people. Oftentimes, they don't define their issues correctly, or they have these big things. So I can ask them what it is they're trying to achieve, and they say, I want to be successful. Well, success in what? In what area? How do you define success? It's different for everybody. And then you can also have those people that say, well, I want success in all the areas. I want to tackle everything at one go. And that becomes such a big issue that they end up dividing their energies too much, and they don't persist at anything, and their expectations aren't realistic enough. What I like to do is break things down into small goals. It helps us when we see progress, when we can actually say, well, this thing worked. And that's hard to do when your goal is really big, really high. But if you have these small little goals, you can see the progress that you've made. That helps you continue with it. And then you can keep expanding to see how high is up. That's a thing that we always say around here. Lots of people come to us with one specific issue.
Yes.
And then once they fix that one issue, they can discover a different issue, or they can discover that the first issue has different layers to it. As I was talking about these triggering events, oftentimes there can be something in your past that creates the problem, but there can be other triggers down the highway that reinforce that issue and reinforce those self-sabotaging behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they start like healing work, let's call it, they get wrapped up in like trying to get to the root of the problem, and so everyone wants to get right to the root. But I think that's what you're talking about there, is like there's usually layers. Like usually the thing you experience once, you've re-experienced it over and over again. And so I kind of like refer to it as layers of the onion. As you kind of go through each layer, they get thicker and thicker, and eventually you will get to the core of that onion and you will be free of it. But the healing process through each layer is beneficial, because one, your life improves as you go through it, but two, you get better at connecting to the thing that you're avoiding, so you could feel it and be free of it.
You get the more you question yourself, the more you understand that all of these experiences you've had are buried in your subconscious mind. And the more you trust the process, the more you question your subconscious mind, the more those answers will appear. At first, you'll get crazy answers, but you have to just continue with the process. And sometimes those crazy answers actually do hold the truth. You have to learn to trust yourself, and you have to learn to trust your subconscious mind. And when you do that, the subconscious mind will bring the answers up for you. But you don't always have to go back into your past to discover the root cause. Mm-hmm. There are some things where the root cause actually is in our enculturation. It's everywhere around us. It's not like it was an experience that you had. It's just part of your life experience, the entire picture. There's going to be other things where, perhaps you don't have to go. It's very helpful to go back and do that inner work. But sometimes we have things that, well, we can just aim forward instead. Yes. Rather than going back and trying to uncover and trying to find the root cause. Why not deal with, this is what I want to do now? How can I best do it going forwards? So there are actually two different approaches, and they both have a time and a place.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm curious about, just as you're talking, just sparking something, in me, is like, a lot of people, when they get into this work, they move into like this place of flow, like life becomes, that's kind of like where I get, and it doesn't mean I don't have resistances, but I still feel flow. I feel like life is unfolding for me. But sometimes I think when people get into this work, when they experience resistance, they think that they just have to change directions. But I think that potentially that resistance is there to show them what they still need to let go of, or what they're still holding on to. And I'd be interested to get your take there.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Resistance can actually be a sign that you're pressing the correct buttons. One of the things that we have around here, my husband is the creator of the Inner Talk subliminal technology.
Okay.
It's a patented technology. It's been researched by numerous independent universities like Stanford and Bremen University in Germany and Colorado State University. And it's been demonstrated effective priming how you speak to yourself. With the Inner Talk programs, you can have these beliefs that are stuck within you. We talk to ourselves all the time. Frequently, that how we talk to ourselves isn't very positive. I was actually listening to a podcast myself this morning, and they were talking about how we talk to ourselves versus how we would talk to a friend. If a friend is having a problem, we're going to be very supportive. We're going to tell them it's okay. We're going to tell them that they're good. But when we have it, when we talk to ourselves, that self-talk can be super negative. We can beat ourselves up. And all that does is create mental blocks. So the Inner Talk programs that we have, that is a mechanical way, just an automatic way to prime that self-talk so that it is more supportive. And what you discover is, there have been times people have called me up and they've expressed resistance to something, to a program that they're working with. And I say, that means it's pressing the right buttons. Mm-hmm. There's different ways that you can handle that. What I find helpful sometimes is taking a break from the program for a week or two and then going back to it. It's as though the subconscious mind needs a bit of time to adjust to the new way of thinking. So for an example of resistance is going to be, say, an affirmation says, I am good. Well, if you say that to yourself, you get that automatic feedback that comes back and says, am I really? I wasn't very good with that. I had this bad thought. I really did that. And you can go through this whole litany of ways that you're not good. So you have this subliminal affirmation coming in that says, I am good. And that can hit resistance. And, it can hold for anything. Anyway, anything that that you say to yourselves. The subliminal self-help programs are designed to change that and make it more positive. And you can have resistance, and resistance will often show itself in feelings of discomfort, irritation, maybe short-tempered, but it's because it's hitting the right button. So I said, one technique you can have is take a break from it. Just be gentle with yourself. Give your subconscious mind a chance to work through it. Lots of people I talk to will simply work through it anyway. They're aware of what resistance is and they're going to play it even more.
Yeah. Yeah. And so go ahead.
I was just going to say just the last bit. If resistance is profound, if you're having a really strong reaction to a positive message, then that is when it's worth going to talk to a professional, someone that you can actually talk through this thing and try and get a more personal insight.
Yeah. And when you say you have these Inner Talk programs, like what do they consist of? Like what does that look like if someone's going to go into an Inner Talk program or subliminal?
These are going to be audio programs, video, but predominantly audio. We have some hypnosis programs as well and some others that use brainwave entrainment, but the vast majority of what we do is just the Inner Talk subliminal program. So you can buy them as an MP3, you can buy them as a physical CD. You can generally just put them on in the background and go about your day. And it can be amazing how quickly they work. I remember once I was quality controlling a program for Joy of Humor, but it happened to be on a day that, how there are days you just get out of bed the wrong side. I was just grumpy and irritable and life sucked, and that was all it was. And I was playing this program in the background. I was just kind of checking it, but I was talking to a colleague at the time, and it was about an hour into the day, and I turned to her and said, "Isn't this fun?" And I caught myself because that was not how I had been feeling. So there are certain places it can work really quickly to change your mood and help you feel better. Other things, when you're trying to uncover past traumas or, negative experiences. It can take longer for healing. I actually use the programs in addition to all of these other things that we're going to talk about, but I use these techniques to cure myself of rheumatoid arthritis. Mm-hmm. So there's a great deal that you can do once you understand the power of the mind and how to tap into it to have your mind help you as opposed to sabotage you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things I think people don't realize, sorry, I'm just going to I keep getting notifications. I got to turn my focus on here. Do not disturb. One of the things that I think a lot of people miss is that how active the subconscious is. Like when you really learn how to take a step back from the mind and just observe everything it's telling you, it's like it just won't shut up. Like, you know, it is just constant. And so for me, you know, the work that I have done has been about understanding why we're saying the things to ourselves that we're saying. Like, so, you know, like why you keep telling yourself you're not good enough or whatever, why you need success. And every thought that you think about, you know, this is where I was stuck forever, just focused so much on success. And my mind was just consumed with success. So it would feed me, you know, tens of thousands of thoughts a day around how I could be more successful and how I could, you know, but that was basically, I recognized that there was this, like, it was telling me that I'm not successful, you know, and I had to go out there and get it. And so that's why I continue to show up. And so I think this is a question I would have for you is like, when you finally start to take this step back and you realize how much your mind is talking to you, does it work, I guess, you know, in these programs, or these audio programs, what you're doing is you are now trying to retrain your brain to start thinking a different way, right? And is it enough? Like I've always kind of been like against, like I'm not against them, but I feel like affirmations, for example, right, would be like, it's like you're trying to say a few positive affirmations against an army of subconscious thoughts, you know? And so for me, I felt like, yeah, there's a benefit. Sure, go ahead and do it. But I don't really think that at the root of this whole entire thing is that you have to get to the root of why all these thoughts are going on in the first place. And so now with your audio programs that you do, you're saying you do that in conjunction with like deeper work to look within. And you said you have science back too, which I'd be interested is like, does that look like just putting these people on these audio programs and seeing if shifts are created, or just maybe walk me through that because I don't fully understand the process that you kind of go through.
You know, with the research that was done at Colorado State University, that was done with our Free of Depression program. Okay. And what they found is when the people played the program in addition to the therapy they were receiving, I mean, these were really diagnosed depressed, not just feeling down. Yeah. I actually call our Freedom from Depression program my Being Cheerful program. I will use it just when I'm feeling a bit blue. But in the research that was done at Colorado State University, these people were diagnosed with depression. They were having therapy. And what they found was if they also used the subliminal program, so you'd have therapy, you know, once or twice a week, maybe even every day, but it's only going to be for an hour or so. Mm-hmm. But if the rest of the time you are playing the subliminal program, then it reinforces, it primes your self-talk, that inner chatter that we have constantly. And when you prime that self-talk, then what you find with a great deal of the mind, it's a two-way street. So when you're saying good things to yourself, then that gets programmed into your subconscious mind. You're adding that. And you want to remember too, the power of bad. We tend to hold on to bad things a whole lot more. That's one of the reasons why just affirmations aren't going to work, because when you've had some bad feedback of some kind, you know, just imagine that you're up in front of your boss and he's going through a review of your work and he tells you 10 good things and one bad thing. You're going to hone in on that one bad thing. If someone frowns at you, mm-hmm. you know, you're going to hone in on that. And there's lots of reasons for that. You know, you know, in evolutionary psychology, it's all about, you know, if you don't pick up on the danger signals, you could be dead or you could be ostracized from the herd. So these things all matter. But researchers like John Gottman at the University of Washington, he looked at relationships. And what he found was for a relationship to work, there has to be at least 5 positives for every negative. So if you've upset your spouse in any way, don't think a simple apology is going to do it. There needs to be 5 positive things that you do in order to counteract that negative thing. And so when it comes to affirmations that you say to yourself, well, in addition to arguing back against them, they can't compete with the pain of the negative. When someone tells you that you're worthless and that person's opinion matters to you for some reason or another, that's gonna cut deep. That's going to go in deep. The advantage with the inner talk subliminal programs is then going to be the repetition. And because of the way it's presented, it bypasses conscious awareness. So have you ever been like out at the stores and then you find yourself humming to yourself only to realize that what you're humming is what's playing over the music system? No. You know, that's kind of how this technology works. You're not aware of it, so you can't argue against it, but then your subconscious mind starts repeating it back, and you'll find yourself repeating the affirmations to yourself. And when your self-talk, when you're having a bad day, that self-talk is going along the lines of life sucks, can't wait till I get home, I hate my job, I'm just so stupid, I can't do this. And when that's replaced with life is good, it's okay, I can do this, I'm enjoying myself, people are nice. When it's replaced by that, you can see how it's hard to be depressed at the same time. You cannot be depressed when you're telling yourself you're happy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and so these audio programs, they are, you can hear them or you can't, because I did some work with attractor field therapy, and this is a long time ago, and essentially, you would get these CDs, and this is how long ago it was, and you would play them, but there was no noise. You couldn't hear anything, but it was supposed to like bring you into the attractor field of abundance or whatever that may be. And so I played around with that for a little bit, but I don't think I was like overly getting the benefit of it. But so what are yours? Like, are they actual audible? You can hear them, or?
There are lots of technologies out there. There are lots of people selling lots of things, and they can hype them up, and they do more harm than good, because oftentimes people want that magic pill, that silver bullet, that one thing that is going to fix everything. And with some of these things that get offered, they overpromise. With our programs, they're a subliminal program. You're going to hear the primary track, so you're going to hear either the music or the ocean track, depending which one you've chosen. You'll also frequently be aware of talking going on in the background. You can't make them out necessarily, although the more relaxed you get, so if you're playing them as you're falling asleep, then maybe more of the words will pop out to you, but you're not going to hear them consciously. You're not really going to be aware of them. And when you're just playing them in the background, they just blend into background noise, but they do still change your thinking automatically.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so how are you, so obviously you have these inner talk, subliminal kind of messages that you guys are putting out there. How else are you working with people now, like right now?
I'm doing some online courses in mind training. The inner talk is just one aspect. It's a tool. It's a tool that can help, that can assist. But for true self-empowerment, the subtitle of the book, the book is Mind Training, the Science of Self-Empowerment. Self-empowerment comes when you have the information, you understand how it works, and you know how to personalize it for yourself. So what I'm doing right now is I am talking to people, I'm training, I'm doing online courses on mind training. So I'm teaching people how these ideas get into their subconscious mind, what the scientific evidence is, the kinds of influence it can have. You take a look at the placebo effect. The placebo effect is a wonderful example of the power of the mind, both positive and negative, that you can have the effect where something actually does harm because you expect it's going to do harm. But when you look at the placebo effect, some of the research there that really fascinated me, of course, people get influenced by how the placebo is presented. So a capsule is more effective than a pill, and injections more effective than a capsule. But what really intrigued me is when you look at the placebo effect globally. So one of the things I found was that the placebo effect for hypertensive drugs in Germany was particularly low. But the placebo effect for gastric ulcers is really low in Venezuela, higher in Europe, and highest in Germany. So then you start thinking about your entire environment, all the stuff that we consume, all the media that we consume, how these ideas get in there for it to have this kind of effect where the people of a whole country, can generally have a reduced placebo effect for one and a higher one for another. That really hones into you how powerful all of our learnings are. So then you get into the area of, well, how does the media influence us? There is research being done around the world trying to figure out why we do what we do. And who do you think uses that research the most?
Yeah, media. Yeah.
The media,
Yeah.
the entertainment industry, politicians, they're going to use it. So I think it's incumbent upon us to start learning some of these techniques. So for example, there is the compliance principle of reciprocity. If someone gives you a gift, we are automatically triggered to want to return a gift as well. So there is the social aspect of it. How many times have I seen, there's a form of commercial. I'm not talking about one specific. There's a particular style that you'll see get used over and over again where someone hears of this great product. Their ears prick up, they start running to go get it. Somebody else hears of it, they start following, and soon there's a whole flood of people. Well, that's to do with social proof. If everybody out there thinks this product is something they must have, well, it must be good, so I better go get mine as well. When you learn these techniques in politics, there was a period the media was cracking jokes about the number of flags, the American flags that the politician would have up behind them.
Right.
But it's because these things can cause an automatic reaction in you. So once you learn these things, once you understand them, then you can watch a politician and you've got your system 2 thinking in place, like Kahneman talks about, in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. You're not in automatic pilot. You're in that careful, thoughtful phase. And then you can discern the manipulations that go on, those adjectives that get slipped in here and there that are designed to try to push you one direction or another. It's all about becoming ourselves, becoming our own person. I don't want someone to puppet me. I don't think you do either. It's about who am I? Who am I at the core? And then who is it that I choose to be?
Yeah, I think it's about learning to like question everything. And, like when the work I do is I help people undo all the beliefs that they took on unconsciously before they were aware that they were taking on belief systems. But then after you start to undo all of those belief systems, now you have to be careful of any new belief systems that you may be taking on as well, right? And so learning how to pay attention to what it is that you're buying into, it's like, I think it's like we'll call it critical thinking in some ways, but it's like learning how to take that step back so that, you are removed from that autopilot. And so that you can see things clearly. And especially, I guess, if you knew the techniques that people are using as well, that would help you see it even more clearly, because now you can say, I see what you're doing there. You got 6 flags behind you. You're trying to influence my decision making, right? And so, one of the things that pops up for me as you kind of talk, though, is like, let's just talk about creating the life that you want. And when you're talking about the placebo effect, which is, I really love that, the placebo effect, because it does show the power of the mind, right? And a guy that I have studied a lot under is Dr. David Hawkins, and he talks about on a scale of consciousness, the intelligence is at like 499, right? And it's like really, really high up there on a logarithmic scale, 0 to 1,000, and so if you can use the power of the mind, you can essentially achieve anything that you want to achieve in your life. But it all comes down to like belief. Like if you believe that you're taking this pill and it's going to heal you, you're probably going to heal. Right? And so it's like, how do we cultivate that belief, from within with respect to, like, let's say if someone wants success, if someone wants to be a multi-millionaire. I think where a lot of people get stuck is they don't really believe it's possible. Like they haven't seen clearly. I talk about this in like entrepreneurship. It's like I'll get like a flash for like a business concept and I can see it from top to bottom. I can see every element of it, right? And it's like I could go ahead and implement it. And I can see everything that was required to implement it. And if I ever do, it's always successful, right? Because I saw it all. But I think when people are thinking about success, even healing, also like healing from actual physical things, it's like I think one of the biggest things that blocks people from healing is that doctor in a doctor lab coat saying you have cancer. Well, you just bought into a belief, and so now you're probably screwed. And I've seen it over and over again in my own personal life, just grandparents and stuff that get diagnosed with cancer and they're dead in like 3 months after that because of the fear and the belief and the value they've given to these doctors. And so how do we learn how to believe things for ourselves, I guess, so that we can manifest it into our own lives? Like how would someone, and I'm really putting you on the spot here, but like how would someone who has cancer believe that they can heal? How would someone who is broke believe they can be rich?
We actually have a spiritual healing for cancer remission program. It's not one that we sell. We give it away free of charge.
Nice.
So people can just contact us and request it, basically. And we did a longitudinal study on that because we've been giving the cancer program away for decades now. But quite some time ago, we did a longitudinal study on it. We actually reached out to all the doctors. And what we discovered there was when the patient and the doctor believed in the power of the mind, that the patient did better. So the first thing, when it comes to the voice of authority, they have done research there that basically shows your judgment, your sense of judgment, parts of your brain literally shut down in the presence of an authority figure. So if the authority figure says that, you can make it happen. And when it comes to cancer, a cancer diagnosis leads to a spike in deaths from stroke, from other conditions, that is phenomenal. So first of all, you have to understand the voice of the authority figure. You have to immerse yourself in what is possible. You have to focus on the stories of people that did do it. And then you need to find a doctor who also believes in the power of the mind as well. So that's how you change it. You expose yourself to that and you pay attention to those people around you. You can have a similar kind of thing with aging. Oftentimes as people get older, I'm in my 60s now, and I've got friends and family that will say, oh, we're in our 60s now, we have to slow down, we have to take it easy, we have to do this. This is what being 60 means. And I say, cancel to that. If someone's saying that to me, I will tell them, don't speak that way. I will literally tell them not to. But I will define for myself. I will judge for myself what I'm capable of. I ran a marathon in 2018. I still run all the time. I still exercise. There is so much about use it or lose it. And that applies both physically and mentally as well. The more you use your mind, you don't have to succumb to things like dementia and Alzheimer's. There was one study I looked at where they look at nuns. For some reason, they're always doing research on nuns. And I think it's because you have a community that stays together for a long period of time. But this particular study I looked at, it showed that they looked at the journals that the nuns kept. And what they found was the nuns that were more optimistic, that were more engaged with life, that connected with life, well, after they died, when they, did autopsies and they examined the brain, they could frequently find a brain riddled with Alzheimer's, the plaques from Alzheimer's, but it never expressed itself. It never expressed itself. And that comes down to neuroplasticity. These nuns had kept themselves engaged. They had other ways to think through issues. They stayed optimistic. Optimism, just being optimistic. There was another study I looked at where they looked at nurses, And what they found was that the most optimistic nurses would have drastically reduced chances of dying from cancer or heart disease, or more than a 52% chance of not dying from an infection. That's huge.
Yeah, and like
That's huge.
how important would this work be for people that are in healthcare, like nurses? Because it's like you're around talking about immersion, like you're around people dying of all these diseases and illnesses that are out there. And it's like if you're not careful, you could very easily buy into the belief system that this is what happens to people, and it's like, so I think that's huge for a nurse to have a positive outlook, and so remove themselves from those belief systems that they might be taking on that they're not even aware of.
What I've heard from nurses, like with any profession, you get people who are good at their jobs and people who are not so good. You have that with teachers, you have that with nurses. But with the best nurses that I've spoken to, they learn from the patients they have who are smiling until the very end. The fact is, we're all going to die at some point.
Yeah.
There isn't any point, arguing. I mean, that's going to happen. It's a case of trying to live as fully as we can every second until that last breath. I want to be engaged. There was we have our own podcast. We've actually been on sabbatical because we were working on mind training, but on our radio show we were talking to someone who deals with death and dying, and what she said was that her mother, when she was in hospice care, so they'd already decided she was in her end days, but her mother wanted to do something still for other people. And even though she was in bed, she couldn't get up, she couldn't do anything, she decided the one thing she could do was pray for these other people. That gave her a sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That gave her something to be positive about, and, maybe you don't believe in God, maybe you just believe in positive energy. I'm a big believer in smiling.
Yeah.
Smiling has so much science behind it. It can sound really trite, really simple. And that's why in mind training, I go through all of the science with these things. But just smiling, you tend to think, when I'm happy, I'll smile.
Mm-hmm.
But when you smile, that causes your brain to produce the happy brain chemicals. So it becomes a two-way street. And when you're smiling, there was two different studies I looked at. One was looking at baseball cards. The other one was looking at high school pictures. And they found that they could predict someone's life based on how much they were smiling. The people that were smiling broadly, the big Duchenne smile, that's the smile that reaches all the way up to the eyes, where your eyes crinkle up, they would live on average 7 years longer. Mm-hmm. They would be happier. They would be more successful. They would be more prosperous. They would have better relationships. When you have that much evidence that, looks at being positive and just smiling, you'd be amazed. I mean, since I came across this research, I started paying attention, and there are lots of people who really don't smile very much.
Oh, I think it's a good majority of people that aren't smiling that much. And I think one of the questions people should ask too is like, I just like I've been having like a flood of awareness recently about like success and some of the things that were missing in my life to like move me to a different level of success. And one of the things that I wrote on there was like a list of 10 that I made, but the last one I wrote was like to not take life too seriously, right? And to have fun and to smile and all of that. And then the recognition though is that if you're not living like that, right? If you're not happy, if you're not like smiling ear to ear, if you're not like having moments where you like really belly laugh, without having to get drunk to do it or whatever, like when you're finally doing that, like you recognize how powerful it is and how much it changes you. But if you're not doing it, you should be asking yourself, well, why? Like where did, because as a kid, we all laughed till we cried. But at some point we turned it off, right? And so like, why did we turn it off? Because, what you're, kind of confirming is what I was putting on that list was that if you learn, why you turned it off and learn how to turn it back on, you're probably going to live longer. and you're probably going to be more prosperous, and you're probably going to have more connections and friendships that have deeper meaning, because no one wants to be around the person that's pissed off all the time.
Exactly. Science has demonstrated the truth of that, but you can see it practically. Because as you said, if you're smiling, you're more open, you're more welcoming. People are going to come up to you. They're going to want to do things for you. You're going to get more opportunities. One of the things that I would ask you about too, though, David, you talk about, wanting to be successful and what that looks like to you. And you're going to be doing coaching with other people, and they all want success in these different areas. One of the questions that I will frequently ask is, what is the point of self-help and personal development? Isn't it all? It's not really about having X number of dollars in the bank. It's about being happy.
Yeah.
So what they find is, even if people have got lots of money, they're not any happier. You need to have enough. But when you turn the focus off from being successful with whatever artificial goal that you may have in place there, and realize it's about being happier today. So I will frequently ask people, because they can come to me with a whole list of things that they're trying to improve in their lives. And I say to them, what would make you happier today? Just a bit happier. We're not trying to shoot for the moon here. What would make you happier today? What can you do to make yourself happier today? One of the things my husband has started doing, he's been doing for the last couple of years now, is at the end of the day, we often will go home, we'll crash in front of the TV, you're just kind of unwinding. But he will make sure that the last things that he watches are comedies.
Love that.
Watch sitcoms. At the end of the day, he wants to go to bed on a laugh.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great tip.
That's a great way to do it. But also, people will often share clips and memes and whatever. They've actually shown great benefit when you're, in your work day. If you suddenly get that text message or something to say, look at this clip that's funny or cute or whatever, it's worth taking the time to do, because just for those few moments, your body will start having the good chemicals going through it. You'll reduce the cortisol, you'll reduce the stress, and you'll be able to think more clearly. So taking those small breaks, don't spend hours, don't, go scrolling through everything. But if you're going to take a break, just take a look at a couple of cute videos or funny videos.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, essentially, the way you're asking me about success is what led me down this path of looking within. Was I had always said that, when I'm successful, I'll be happy. And then I started getting exposed to the work of David Hawkins, and unconsciously, I started uncovering why I wasn't happy. Right. And so, as I healed from that and I started becoming more happy, then the money began to flow in. And so then I realized the whole entire world had it backwards. Everyone was trying to get to a destination to feel some sort of way. But if you just start to feel that way first and understand why you don't feel that way now, then once you feel that way already, it's like essentially you're already the state that you want to be. You've changed your frequency, whatever you want to call it. And then naturally that thing that once you thought was going to get you, that comes flowing into your life. And that's what I experienced for myself. And then I was like, oh, I just need to teach everybody this exact same thing, and they can have whatever that it is that they want. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I like that you're connecting it with science as well. And I think there's a shift happening and like an awakening happening of people. There's an evolution of consciousness. More and more people are starting to question, why they are the way they are. Right. And the work that you do, the work that I do, it's all helping people decipher that, because it's not as simple as we do think. Yeah, it is. Like, yeah, smile, and that for sure would work. Like, if you start smiling, you're gonna be a happier person. You're gonna live a better life. And but there's also like learning to decipher what the mind is actually telling you, I think is like really important. Like that's the one thing that I've recognized, in my work, is that people talk about speaking their truth, right? But sometimes your truth is from your belief systems and your protections. And so you have to get through that first and then connect to your actual truth. So I guess the question I was going to ask for you is like, where are you at on like God, universe, consciousness. For me, I believe in like God, but I don't believe like man in the sky God. I believe in like interconnected energy that is, the energy that connects us all. It's all knowing, all powerful, all present. And so when I learned that I could step out of mind and I could observe what the mind was telling me, I recognized that I was something greater than the body and mind. And I know that you do so much work in mind. And I'm wondering where you stand on that, like because essentially you're doing the same thing that I'm doing. You're talking about the power of the mind. I would talk about it of learning how to observe the mind from a higher self, or our true self. And so where are you at on that kind of spectrum, I guess?
I wanted to keep mind training totally science-based.
Yeah.
I think I've encountered too much self-help where there isn't a basis behind what they're saying. They're not providing the complete answers. They don't, they can provide inspiration, but they don't actually provide all the tools. So I wanted to keep mind training totally science-based. That said, you will see spiritual truths creeping out in several places in mind training. There's great humility that comes when you realize how easily you can be manipulated.
Yeah.
And there's great humiliation that comes from knowing that your observation skills aren't anything like as good as you think they are. Like eyewitness testimony, the Innocence Project showed that, let me see if I can remember these numbers. It's something like 350 people that were convicted and sentenced to death. 71% of them was based on misidentification. Once they had, I think it was DNA information that came out. And these people had served 14 years. They were based on the eyewitness testimony, that person in court that says that person did it. 71% of these 350 people on death row. That's really, really humbling. And then you get into this idea of free will.
Yeah.
I discuss free will in mind training. I go through the science about it, how there's activity in the subconscious mind before you actually choose. Someone looking at your brain can tell you what you're going to choose about 7 seconds before you do. And that information is there in the subconscious mind. But this whole idea of free will, the fact that everything we do is based on our genetics, our upbringing, our life experience, everything has a precursor to it. But when I talk about free will, it's like, okay, if our behaviors, our choices come from our subconscious mind, well, we can decide how to program that subconscious. We can stop watching movies where she betrayed him, he betrayed her. You can choose the kinds of beliefs that you have. But when you take charge of your free will, when you start thinking about all of these automatic ways you get triggered and get manipulated, when you reverse that, when you take on board some of these things we're talking about, like smiling, well, your life will change in the process. Science has demonstrated that. You talked about happiness and success. They actually found that they've looked at it. Happiness will make you more successful. Success won't necessarily make you happy, but happiness will make you more successful. But when you take charge of your free will, then you become part of other people's experience. They watch you. They see your before and after. They say, that person managed to do it, maybe I can too. And I find great spirituality in that as well. And to answer your question, I do believe in God. Once again, not the man in the clouds, whatever. I very much believe in spirituality. I think life is a journey. It's about becoming the best person that we can be, but it's about contributing and about giving to others. It's about making the world a better place. And all of that, as I said, mind training is science-based, but all of these things will filter through. So I talk about meditation, mindfulness, the power of awe. Going out for a walk, just going out for a walk, having some sunshine. Well, sunshine helps you produce serotonin. Having exercise helps you produce endorphin. Going out with a friend and having a laugh, that's going to increase all the effects. Taking time to experience awe. So when you're on a walk, take a few seconds to look at that beautiful cloud up there, that tree, that bird singing, taking time to think about what's going on around you. All of these things will have a rippling effect through your life. And it's not just about today, it will change your tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, say that, amen to that. Yeah, but and what I think, to sum this up is that I think where people would benefit most would be to begin observing what you're telling yourself regularly. Because when you're not in that observer, when you're not this, I like to say, like, what am I thinking about right now? You are letting the mind just run the show, and it is going to run the show from all of your protections, all of your belief systems that are essentially your limitations. And so when you even just, like you say, if you go on a walk, just take a second to step out of mind and just be in the moment, be present, observe the fresh air and the trees and the birds singing and wherever it may be. And it's like that, it's so powerful in itself. But then the other thing that you could do in that is, like, notice when the mind keeps kind of trying to jump in. I think, for me, this work has been about learning how to step out of the constant chatter of the mind, right? And so every time I do that, I learn something new. I'm more present. I enjoy life more. But the thing that has been, I guess, shocking to me is that how just noisy the mind is. Like, it is just, we just does nonstop. And, we do all of these things. Like, we brush our teeth to, keep our mouth hygiene up. We wash our bodies. We do all this, but what are we doing to keep the hygiene of our mind up? And it's like very few people are doing anything. And I'm not saying you have to sit and meditate for hours on end, but as you mentioned, something as simple as just noticing that you're not smiling and then choose to smile. Right now, you've used that free will as opposed to just letting the mind run the show. If you're on a walk and the mind is just thinking about all the million things that it always thinks about that are, essentially pointless, take a second to just observe and tune in. And like that in itself is like just so powerful to step out of all of that. And I think that's probably like the work that you're helping people do. And I think that's what's coming on, mainstream. You're like me. I've been doing this for like 20 years. You've been doing it longer than I have. And I think more and more people are like wanting to understand like what's going on inside their head and why they took on these beliefs and why they're having these thoughts. So I'm feeling that shift. I don't know if you've been feeling that as well, but I definitely think there's a shift happening there.
There's definitely a hunger for it, a hunger for the information. I think what I have seen over time is when I was younger, more people were religious, but then people started seeing the flaws in religion. So they move away from that and maybe they go to spirituality and self-help, but then they encounter there's plenty of flaws there as well. There's, lots of the teachers have clay feet. The biggest takeaway that I have with all of the work that I do is lots of people think that they are just who they are.
Yeah.
This is how I was made. Maybe this is how God made me. This is how I'm made. This is who I am. That's not the case. You can choose who you want to be. You can learn how your mind works, and you can make all of these. They're minor tweaks. None of this stuff is difficult. Smiling isn't difficult. It doesn't cost you anything. But there's lots of these little tweaks that you can learn to habituate that will change your life. You really can choose the kind of person you want to be. That's not to say that you can become president or you can become Michael Jordan just because you believe that you are the best, but you can get out of your own way. You can be the best version of you possible. And everyone has talents and abilities in some area or another, even if it's just, being a good friend, being a good parent, being a good, child to your parents. We all have talents and abilities, and there's not just one thing we're supposed to achieve in life. There's the whole gamut. There's a whole, tapestry of, yes, there is work, but there is our personal lives. There is our relationship. I want to be the best version of me possible. And so I'm constantly looking out for what am I missing here? We get enculturated in lots of ways. I want to pay attention to the enculturation to say, is that really what I want?
Yeah.
You have to stop and think about it.
Yeah, love it. This has been great, Ravinda. I'm glad we got connected. It's been a great conversation. Where can people find you? You got a book coming out, your book that's out already, or so why don't you just give it a second and tell us about all that?
The book is out. It is Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. It goes through all of the stuff we've been talking about and a whole lot more. Every chapter has actual exercises in place to help you start putting these things into practice. You can buy the book anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore. If they don't have it in stock, they can get it. You can learn more about me by going to my website. That is ravindertaylor.com. That's RAV for Victor, IND for dog, ER, ravindertaylor.com. You can say that's my website. You can also find me on social networking, and you can subscribe to my newsletter as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'd love to hear back from anyone listening to the show. I would like to, I'm very interested in feedback. And if you actually try these techniques, I'd like to know, the kinds of results that you had, and, even the places that maybe something didn't work for you. I'd be happy to give you pointers.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for taking the time.